When I was growing up, my friends and I would always tell stories about places that were rumored to be haunted. Whether true or not, they would become taboo places that kids would never go to because they were deemed dangerous. In hindsight, they were simply dark or hard to get to, but I remember being really scared at the time. But the place I'm going to talk about today isn't just a rumor or something that exists in a child's imagination. It's a place that the whole neighborhood knew about and was actually rumored to be haunted. I'm going to ask you to take a guess. Where do you think it is? I've never seen a single ghost in my life, and yet I still believe they exist. It happened when I was in the 4th grade, when I was 11 years old, and it's a bit of a blur now, but it was an event that shook up my neighborhood and the whole school. There aren't many overpasses in Seoul anymore, but if you're old enough, you might remember the old ones, the ones that were painted green or blue, and they were used by more people than you'd think. I'm not sure, but most of them were near schools, and there was one in front of the elementary school I went to. A lot of kids used them to get to and from school, because they were considered safer than crosswalks back then. But for me, as a young child, overpasses were unwelcoming. The stairs were high and steep, and the road seemed endlessly deep as I looked down over the handrail. So I used to feel a sense of dread every time I crossed one. But was there more to it than just the fact that they were scary? The viaduct always gave me an eerie feeling, especially when I saw the cars rushing by, but my parents always told me to use it, and I couldn't help but follow their advice. One morning, I headed to the viaduct to go to school, and something was wrong. From a distance, I could see that there was a yellow line in front of the steps of the overpass, blocking me from going up. Thought, what's going on? I wondered if there had been some kind of accident overnight, or if there was something wrong with the overpass itself. But I had to get to school, so I and the other kids who were stuck in front of the overpass eventually turned around and used the crosswalk. I made it to school safely, and class went on as usual. At recess after first period, I was hanging out with my friends when suddenly one of them came running up to me, panting and breathless, and said, "Hey, did you guys hear about the overpass?" We, of course, remembered that it had been blocked in the morning, and nonchalantly replied, "Yeah, we tried to cross it, but we couldn't." We were all excited, but what our friend had to say was completely unexpected. A woman fell off there at dawn and died. The suddenness of the news froze us in our tracks. A person died? The kids were instantly terrified, and the question started flying. Is it true? Why did she die? But even our friend who broke the news didn't seem to know the full story. My parents told me that someone fell off there and died, and they blocked the whole overpass. Rumors like this spread like wildfire among young children, and before lunchtime, the whole school was talking about the accident on the overpass. That day, after school, the kids were walking out the front door one by one, and all eyes were on the overpass. As expected, a few kids were curiously flocking to the area, looking up and making noise. I walked closer with them and witnessed a scene that gave me goosebumps. In the middle of the road under the overpass, a human figure had been drawn in white paint. At that moment, screams erupted and children began to run away in a panic, but some of them were still curious enough to try to climb onto the overpass, as if they were alley bosses. We freaked out and yelled, "Dude, what do you think you're doing?" But they didn't seem to be scared and actually seemed to find the situation rather amusing. Eventually, in desperation, they climbed over the line and onto the overpass. I was honestly curious to see what it looked like up there, but I wasn't brave enough to overcome my curiosity, so I just waited below for them to come down. Soon enough, we heard a mixture of tearing screams and gasps coming from the kids who had climbed up. Those of us below were frantically shouting, "What's there? What did you see? What did you see?" And the kids who came back down a few moments later looked disappointed. "Nothing much, just another yellow line in the middle of the overpass," they said, and our anticipation was instantly dashed. Once they realized that nothing had happened, one by one they lost interest and started heading home. But I still had a weird feeling. Even though nothing had happened, something sent a chill down my spine. I wondered if the dead guy was angry at the sight of me. I was still young enough to imagine that, so I drove home. After I got home, I couldn't get the story of the overpass out of my head, so I told my parents about it, but they already knew about the incident, including some pretty specific details. Turns out, A young woman who lived in a single-family home not far from my house had fallen to her death from an overpass in the early hours of the morning, very drunk. She'd been arguing with her boyfriend, who she'd been dating for a few days, all night, and she'd made that choice out of desperation. There was also talk that he'd cheated on her. Honestly, I don't understand it now, and I didn't then either. What on earth could have upset him so much that he would have taken such an extreme step? But whether I understood it or not, it didn't change the important fact. Someone who lived in the same neighborhood as me was dead, and for the rest of my life, we would continue to drive past the very spot where he died. Time passed, about 2 weeks after the incident. That's when a strange rumor started circulating around school. A virgin ghost is haunting the overpass. At first, I shrugged it off. We thought it was just someone making up an exaggerated story about a dead person. But as time went on, the rumors got weirder and weirder, and soon, everyone had no choice but to believe them. At school, the rumors of ghosts on the overpass were getting louder and louder, and even the teachers were warning their students not to keep talking about it after class. If you're so scared, don't go near the overpass at night. It wasn't that the teachers were actually saying there were ghosts, but the kids were getting more agitated, as if the teachers were admitting it. It was almost as if the teacher was admitting it, too. That's when the strange sightings started coming in. I saw it there. There was a woman or something standing on the overpass. The rumors grew louder and louder, and eventually something more serious happened. Car accidents started happening near the overpass. At first, we thought it was just a coincidence, but as the accidents, both large and small, continued to happen over and over again, there was a growing sense of unease among the people. One car even crashed into a guardrail, causing the school fence to collapse under the force of the impact. It didn't stop there. At night, whenever I would leave my windows open, I would often hear the sound of a car slamming on its brakes near the overpass. It was as if someone had suddenly appeared in the middle of the road and drivers were screeching to a halt. As the rumor spread at school, I cautiously asked my parents about it, and my mother said with a serious look on her face, "Yeah, that's right, there's been a lot of accidents around there lately." It's really creepy what people are saying. Drivers have also come forward with testimonies. I was driving down the road, and all of a sudden, I saw a woman standing in front of me. I slammed on the brakes, and when I got out of the car and looked around, there was no one there. A local delivery man had a similar experience. I was out delivering in the evening, and I passed under the overpass on my motorcycle, and I saw a woman standing still in the middle of the road, and I immediately got goosebumps all over my body. The rumors got out of hand, and eventually the school started to respond officially. The principal called all the students to the playground and said, "There have been a lot of accidents near the overpass lately. Please don't go there alone, especially at night, and be sure to look around when crossing the road." It's hard to describe the atmosphere at the time. For nearly half a year, the ghost rumors continued unabated, and the accidents continued to happen. Eventually, the area was designated as an accident zone. Over time, however, things began to change. Sightings of the woman on the overpass dwindled, and at some point, we stopped hearing about accidents, about 6 months after the woman passed away. The trouble started when another tragic death occurred. A man on his way home from work, drunk, fell straight down an overpass to his death. There was nothing special about him. He was just an ordinary office worker, on his way home. But what made it even creepier was that he fell from the exact spot where the woman had died. After he fell, there were reports that a car passed over his body, but the scene is too gruesome to put into words. After another death at the same spot, the authorities finally decided to demolish the overpass. Nominally, this was done for the smooth flow of traffic and the safety of pedestrians, but few of the local residents or students believed it straight away. Eventually, a new pedestrian crossing was built about 50 meters away from the overpass, and people gradually forgot about the incident. However, there was another incident that was decisive in convincing me of the existence of ghosts. About 2 or 3 months after the woman's death, strange rumors started circulating in our class. At first, I shrugged it off, but less than a week later, the truth of the rumor was revealed. The mother of one of my classmates was a shaman. At that time, we didn't know much about concepts like shaman or shaman, So the kids were bullying him out of simple curiosity. If your mom is a shaman, do you see ghosts too? Naturally, he angrily denied it, but they kept teasing him, and eventually he got tired of it. Over time, we grew closer, and one day he confided in a hushed voice, "Actually, sometimes I do see them." Then another kid he was best friends with suddenly got into a fight in the classroom one morning, and the rumor spread even faster. On the way home from school, his mischievous spirit kicked in and he asked, "Just to be sure, do you really see ghosts?" He told me that when he looked directly at the overpass, there was a woman lying on the left side, halfway down the stairs. His words were so vivid and convincing that even the children with him were speechless. What was even more eerie was that he didn't even know that someone had died there. He had just seen a woman lying face down in the middle of the stairs, and that's what sent everyone into a panic that night. As soon as we heard this, we rushed over there again, and I grabbed him and asked him, "Are you sure you didn't just make this up from some random story you heard from other kids?" But he was adamant. "I'm serious. I didn't know any of this. I just heard it for the first time." And then he added, "But it wasn't a person, I'm sure of it." The moment I heard those words, goosebumps broke out all over my body. Eventually, the overpass was demolished, and nothing more happened. But for nearly a year, rumors of the overpass ghost continued to circulate around the school. The things I saw and heard along the way were so eerie that I can still remember them vividly. The story goes like this. The moment I heard the word overpass, I could picture what it looked like. At the time, I was afraid to stand on the viaduct because I felt like I was going to fall off. But when I found out that 2 people had actually lost their lives and numerous accidents had occurred on it, it became even creepier. If it was eventually demolished, I can only imagine how serious it must have been at the time. I can only imagine how frustrated and resentful she must have been, crawling around on her stomach, and how the people who saw her must have felt, whether in the car or on the viaduct.